Hi, everyone. Welcome to day 3 of Industrial Ethernet Week. We are so excited for today. Today is all about the future of Industrial Ethernet. We're going to be talking with Al Beydoun, the president of the ODVA, on single-pair Ethernet and adoption industry-wide. We'll have a keynote discussion with him. And I know yesterday it was interesting. We had kind of an unprompted conversation with Rockwell Automation on their new cabinet design and how single-pair Ethernet is enabling them to reduce the number of materials by 85% and take a box build from about a day and a half down to an hour and a half. And so a lot of questions, a lot of excitement about this technology, but how is it going, being adopted across the industry? And so we're going to have a keynote discussion on that. And then following, we're going to have a panel discussion with Rockwell Automation. So Amanda Krasowski from Rockwell Automation and R.C. Crosby from Pepperl and Fuchs on AI and digital. Are these just buzzwords that we hear about from the media? Or are they really impacting the manufacturing environment today? So we're really excited for that discussion. So with that, I'd like to open up and welcome Mackenzie Reed and Al Beydoun to the stage.
All right, Al. Well, thanks for joining us again. It's good to see you again. You were here last year to present about single-pair Ethernet and have a discussion. So let's dive right into it and tell the audience about the survey that ODVA recently conducted.
Okay, great. First, I wanted to say I'm very happy to be back here at the Industrial Ethernet Week. So we have some really exciting information to share about the study that we commissioned at the ODVA. So we'll jump into it. So we really wanted to understand, working with the Market Advisory Committee at ODVA, to understand what is the market. Is the market ready for single pair Ethernet? What are the perceptions? What are the opportunities? How do we? What are the challenges? And to really use this one to help us determine what steps, what are the things that we might do in the future to help educate and raise awareness about the technology.
And can you share, just before we dive into it, just a little bit about what the Market Advisory Committee is, the newest one within ODVA? So can you kind of share the mission statement of that group?
Sure. So the Market Advisory Committee was established a few years ago with the purpose to help the organization understand the market and basically help us assess the technologies, what areas of focus we should be working on. And they represent experts in the industry and with participation from the membership. So they bring a lot of knowledge that we use to help us determine what specific areas of focus the organization should be working on and the priorities. And this would help us, the management team, as well as the board of directors, to set the right priorities so we could execute accordingly.
Yeah, so we, being a member of the MAC, we spent a considerable amount of time formulating, who this was going to be for, who we were going to try and target, and went through a few of the vendors that were going to conduct the study. So can you tell us a bit about the one that we landed on and the work that they did?
Sure. So we ended up with Endeavor Business Intelligence, and they are really, and the choice was their involvement in the different markets that they cover. So they're really involved in industrial automation brands like Automation World, Control Design, and we felt that these will provide us good coverage of important feedback that we could receive from the market. So the study was conducted back in June 2023. And we had close to 250 participants, so to almost 250 completed surveys that were concluded.
Yeah, and basically anybody that's watching this stream today probably is aware of those publications that were targeted. So I think it was the right group of people, and as we'll get into the structured questions, we're really trying to get to the root of single pair Ethernet readiness.
Exactly. So the first question we asked the respondents basically is more toward the industry focus. So we asked, which, if any, of the following describe the market and or the applications their company is involved with. And the system integration and engineering services was up there together with discrete manufacturing, food, utilities, then industrial machinery, petroleum, and so on. So 38%, the key point of respondents indicate that their company is involved in system integration and engineering services, or the other, again, similar 38%, they're involved in discrete manufacturing.
Yeah, so I think it just reinforces that the target group was correct. The industries that you see there on the screen are the ones that you would expect to see for industrial automation, process, discrete manufacturing, material service and packaging. So it just kind of reinforces the target group that we were going after to learn this information.
Absolutely. The next question was to understand the roles of the people, the respondents, the participants, and we had all levels of management and contributors. So we had from a CEO, COO, CFO, 14%, executive team, senior level management, and manager, mid-level management, that's 25%, individual contributors, 48%. So you could see that the middle, the manager, individual contributors, that is the majority, and these are key decision makers that would help to really execute and deploy the technology.
Yeah, the individual contributor and the manager level, I was very happy to see that, because it means that it's the people who actually have their hands on the technology that are maybe in the test lab, utilizing sample products or adapter kits or whatever they're using, depending on the different style of single pair Ethernet. Because, as people may or may not know, there's a few different flavors, there's different applications, which we'll touch on some of that today. But it was really good to see that it's the people at the bottom, not the bottom, the people that have their hands on the technology for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
But also, I thought the data was interesting around the ownership level, the CEO level being above 10 percentile.
Sure.
Because as we're trying to get market data out there and education like what we're doing today, it means that it's at least on their radar, which I think is pretty interesting for that it's hitting that top level.
Sure. Absolutely.
Across these different organizations, no matter the size of them.
Exactly. The next question was just some additional relevant information on the demographics, what the size of the company. So the median company size was in revenue is 10 to 100 million, in employee size 100 to 500. We did say have about quarter of the companies at less than 5 million or 50 employees, and another quarter were companies of revenues of 1 billion or more and 1,000 plus employees. One comment here is that the majority of the respondents, 66%, reported working for a company with corporate headquarters in North America. This is just the nature of the endeavor, their ability to reach, that's kind of their base for the distribution of their publication. I mean, there was nothing any more specific about that. EMEA was 18%, Asia Pacific 11%, and Central South America at 5%. So then we go to the next one is we start getting into the technology itself, Ethernet technologies in use. So we asked which of the following Ethernet network technologies are currently used in your facility or your projects, and the top answers Ethernet IP, where we're happy to hear that. So this is one of our key technologies. But again, it reflects that a lot of the users are in North America, so it does not surprise me or us. So Modbus TCP came in second at 61%, Profinet at 40%, OPCUA 29, then followed by EtherCAT at 26, Heart IP at 16, and then the numbers go down
Yeah, and
before that.
I was glad to see this because it reinforces other data that's been shared for years. If anyone has joined single pair Ethernet discussions, either at Harding or any other manufacturer, there's been some pie charts that have been shared in the last number of years about the growth, the exponential growth of Ethernet IP in the market year over year. Most of the time, double-digit growth year over year. So this really reinforced that just as an ease of use technology for commissioning in the field. The market already knows this technology, and I think is interested, at least conceptually, about single pair Ethernet, not as its own thing that is standalone living on an island, but is unlocking more capabilities within the Ethernet IP realm.
Exactly.
And that was another thing that we talked about within the Mac is how do we message this technology? Is it its own thing and should be separated from the larger Ethernet world, or is it unlocking capability in devices for the first time? And ultimately we went in that direction.
Right. Yeah, and we'll have an opportunity toward the end, to talk about some of that. So the next question that we asked is, regarding the applications that would benefit from Ethernet. So what did they think which applications would benefit the most? So the top questions answers came in. Remote, hard-to-reach locations came in as the highest, followed by highly distributed field devices, then simple low-cost devices, push buttons, and on this one here, I'll take a side comment here. I mean, this is an area where we're already seeing single-pair Ethernet being deployed. A case in example here is the in-cabinet application.
Yeah.
So it uses T1S. It is a single-pair Ethernet, and it is being deployed, and it's basically connecting devices, small devices that have been typically hardwired, and now we have the ability to connect them through a single-pair Ethernet technology. So it's interesting.
Yeah, so touching on that a little bit further, it's one of the flavors, I would say, is the 10-base T1S and the in-cabinet capabilities. Also, looking at that data on the screen, the hazardous location. I was actually surprised that wasn't going to be at the very top because APL was kind of the first to the market for hazardous location standards. ODVA publishing one of the standards for APL to be used in hazardous locations and in explosion-proof locations. So I was actually happy to see that remote and hard-to-reach locations was at the top, and that highly distributed field devices, so the individual device that's out, maybe mounted on a pipe or a sensor, a multifunction sensor or a purpose-built sensor in the field, that those were so highly rated by the people that we were targeting here. And then also things like 10-base T1S with the low-cost devices inside the cabinet being push buttons, contactors, things like that. And we'll actually talk more about that, I think, in another session. But this was really interesting to me, this specific data, because it wasn't what I was expecting. I really thought that APL would be the top because it was somewhat of the first, but I was glad to see this.
Yeah. So and we'll talk later about the APL itself. Obviously the technology is ready, and the deployment is happening.
Yeah.
You're already seeing devices coming to the market. Definitely from the perspective of the standard organizations, from an ODVA perspective, obviously the specifications are released. conformance is ready, and we already see some activity that some vendors are already working on that. So it's also good to see another single pair Ethernet application that is coming to the market. So this will help the overall technology as well. Okay, the next slide is questions asking basically reasons for not switching to Ethernet. Why does your organization continue to use non-Ethernet field communication solutions? Things like serial, analog, field bus, etc. And one of the top answers were that the current communications technology they felt is adequate. The staff is familiar with the current technology, and followed by that is that they couldn't interrupt production to modernize. Lack of capital to modernize came in after that. Then the perception that Ethernet solutions are more expensive. Advantages to using Ethernet are unclear and insufficient. And this is where an area that, we're doing this today to help some of these, educate the market and raise awareness about some myths, in some cases why, participants maybe or users, they see that either there's the solutions are more expensive or they're not seeing the advantages.
Yeah. I think that the first one being the top rated makes sense, that people, if they're already deploying Ethernet in their location, they know it, they're comfortable with it, it has the functionality that they want. I think the second and the third points are interrelated, which is that staff may be resistant to change coming on board, and that is further made more difficult by a lot of these plants across the board. It doesn't really matter what industry you're in. They don't want to go out of production to implement something new, and especially if it's something that the staff is unfamiliar with, because this is a new technology. It's a new physical layer as well as new functionality for the devices. And I think that people are excited about that additional functionality, but there is resistance to change early on for new technology, learning something new. People are probably potentially, overloaded in these plants, and they're like, can't think about like adopting a new technology, learning a new thing. But even more so than that, I think that maybe people think that it's an all or nothing situation of, okay, I have to deploy this new Ethernet technology plant-wide. We're going to be down for X amount of time. I'm going to have to call in a lot of system integrators and go back to my control OEMs to implement all of this. And really, I think that's where it's our responsibility to do the education of, this isn't fundamentally different. It is a change, but you can do it as it makes sense for you, as you're potentially replacing sensors in the field anyway. If you want to get in front of it and do a migration, it will be challenging, but it won't be, a plant-wide change. If you're already using Ethernet, it's not going to be that you need all new controls and all new integration. You may just be tacking this on. And I think that was important, going back to the Mac of how do we message this, and it's an extension of Ethernet. It's not a whole new thing that is going to completely, bring your plant down, and you're going to have to plan for it.
Exactly.
So I think that's going to have to continue, but those two being interrelated. Lack of capital, that one, makes sense. That's always a challenge.
Always a challenge, yeah.
I think it goes back to Ethernet solutions being more expensive. That goes back to education again. There may be an upfront cost there, but the ease of commissioning in the field, the ease of maintenance, the increased functionality, each plant and each application is going to have to weigh, that cost benefit analysis for itself.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I think it's just more education on our part.
Sure. Okay, then the next question was industries that would that are most suited for SPE. So the questions were, for which industries do you believe SPE is most suited? And top came in discrete manufacturing, automotive, packaging, material handling, semiconductor, followed by, that came in at 51%, utilities, electric, natural gas, etc., food, pharmaceutical, at 38%, petroleum, chemical, gas, and then we had the don't know, not sure. So again, this is where we feel that the opportunity to educate and work with the market, So
Yeah, we had our last market advisory meeting last week, and this came up specifically about, okay, how do we do more things like this, between companies like Harding and ODVA, but how do we even pull in everyone,
Sure.
like all the MAC members, all the ODVA members into cross-promotional events, white papers, case studies, time studies,
Right.
because I think that 21%, if you're looking at the top where it's, 51% and then 39, it's easy to overlook 21%, but essentially 1 in 5 is saying that they don't know how they would use this.
Sure.
And so there's going to be the need for more education of, okay, there's 10 base T1S, and this is where this lives in the automation environment.
Right.
There's hybrid. There is general purpose SPE, which is the active project that's going on within ODVA right now. And, there's just these different flavors.
Sure.
And then there's also APL. And it's not even the question of what is general purpose versus APL.
Right.
It's maybe even more so how do those work together? Because it's like an automation environment isn't only going to be 100% hazardous and explosion proof.
Right.
It
You
may
have a
make sense for
combination
them.
of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It may make sense for them to implement general purpose when that standard is done in cooperation with APL.
Sure.
And so how do we do that? And all of these case studies and white papers are going to be required to address that, 1 in 5 that is maybe a little unsure of how to deploy it.
Exactly. So definitely we see the opportunity there. And then we asked, what are the top benefits of SPE? The comment below is, so you'll see a percentage associated with each of the priorities, and that percentage is basically the respondents identifying the benefit as extremely significant or very significant. So the top benefit that the respondents, for the technology was related to the ability to provide power and communication via same wire pair. So, this has been probably the most known fact and about the SPE. So there's definitely not surprising to see that being the top item. Then followed by the increased speed and bandwidth. So that's obviously the benefit of Ethernet communication coming in, and it is coming in at 53%. Again, many of the respondents feel that this is extremely significant or very significant. Then came simplified cabling, followed by lower cost and easier data integration, cybersecurity, and secure communication. And I'll touch base, on some of these. Obviously the lower cost. We've been educating and hearing all the benefits of single pair Ethernet. You have 2 wires, so you're reducing material, and with that you're supporting many initiatives, including sustainability and others, and the digitalization, bringing easier data integration and so on. So that's also connecting every devices in the field that have not been previously connected to the Ethernet, and bringing the speed and the increased speed and the bandwidth. And with Ethernet technologies, obviously, you benefit from all the known knowledge about cybersecurity and secure communication. So that's been that's not surprising as well.
And ODVA has really been at the forefront of establishing that cybersecurity and making sure that these devices are safe. So again, single pair Ethernet is a platform change. It's a new physical layer, but a lot of the tools are going to be able to be at least used as a jumping off point from a security standpoint. So it's like, maybe some new firmwares will need to be written, or things will need to be added to the catalog. When Ethernet's going out and discovering devices, these new devices will have to be added to that.
Sure.
But we are starting with a very solid foundation of SIP security and all the work that ODVA has done. And then addressing some of the other points from the survey, it's kind of the power communication's a no-brainer.
Sure.
That's I think what everyone was originally excited about, and the simplified cabling. It's if anybody's kind of been in this market for a while, it's a product of the automotive market where it started, and it being inside the wiring harness of vehicles, and that was really like a proof of concept that the industrial market took and then said, we're going to make this fit our applications, and whatever we need to change about the technology, we're willing to do. But that started, back in 2016. So, we're almost coming up on 10 years here shortly of development for the industrial market. The increased speed and bandwidth, in presentations that have been done by Harding and other organizations in the past, we've shown, the IEEE projects that kind of started this, and those projects have been complete, for some number of years now, and are now being extended.
Sure.
So one example being that the first standard came out for 100 megabit per second, but it wasn't quite the same as traditional standard Ethernet. And so very quickly, everyone basically had the same thought that we need to open this project back up, extend the reach.
Sure.
And now, it's in development, not quite done, but it will exceed 100 meters, which is the established standard for standard Ethernet now. So it's like still work to do, but there are standards that are out there that are mature,
Sure.
that have been published for quite some time. And, again, kind of linking some of this data together, it's lower cost comes with, decreased complexity and the ability to provide power and communication. As soon as you tell people that you're going to go from 8 wires to 2, it's like, okay, well, I'm saving copper, I'm saving weight.
Yep.
And there's new cable standards that have come out to support specific single pair Ethernet applications, but the technology is somewhat reverse compatible to what's already in the field, where maybe you're adding more channels to it.
Right.
So, I think a lot of this made sense seeing it. Space saving, when you get to the actual physical hardware itself, it's noticeably smaller, no matter what the type is.
Exactly.
In a previous session, going back to the 10 base T1S, it's space saving and it's cost saving because of the amount of labor.
Sure.
So going from, having to use 21 wires on a contactor down to the single cable.
Sure.
That's an immediate benefit for the OEMs, and that will be passed along to the end users as well.
Exactly.
And service and maintainability in the field then becomes easier. If you need to swap out a component, then it's a drop-in replacement.
Yeah, exactly. And one comment I'd like to again stress and you mentioned that is because the single pair Ethernet, I mean, it's a physical layer. I mean, just like we talked about the APL as an application, so it's a physical layer, and all the benefits of Ethernet IP we were able to bring in, including security, safety, etc., etc. So this is the so it's a continuation. Is not there's a lot of benefits that come with it.
I think that gives users a peace of mind. If they've been using Ethernet, they know the safety that they're going to get as part of that that's already baked in, so they can come to expect that with future iterations of Ethernet as well.
Yeah. Okay, next. So the willingness to invest. I mean, we obviously wanted to understand what's where is the market readiness really? Are are companies willing to start investing
Right.
to drive the benefits of single-pair Ethernet. And you could see that willing to make significant investments came in at 11%, followed by moderate investments at 31%, and minimal investment at 45%, and not willing to invest came in at 30%. So the key here is if you really add up from the minimal and above, the minimal, moderate, and significant investments, you could see that the majority are saying that they are willing to make at least minimal investments and alterations to work processes to achieve the benefits from this technology. And that's where we feel that this is the opportunity. This is very positive information that we're able to receive from this survey.
And to revisit the data point of who was polled in this, it's there are companies which may be just over $1 million or $1 to $5 million in revenue, up to multi-billion-dollar companies.
Correct.
So across the spread, 87% of these companies, which are the full spectrum of OEMs and automation companies or industrial companies, are ready to do some amount of investment in specifically single-pair Ethernet technology. This, just to make it abundantly clear, this wasn't just an Ethernet study, it was a SPE study. So 87% of those that were polled were ready to adopt this in some way, shape, or form.
Sure. Okay, and then we asked what devices most suitable for SPE, and the answers came in, and obviously they were able to select all that apply. So you have multiple answers. Sensors came in the highest, I/O, PLCs, followed by machine vision, cameras, simple devices, push buttons, motors, robots, etc. Again, this is not surprising in the sense that you have sensors, and these are the hard to reach areas. Excuse me, I pulled. Okay, yeah, the hard to reach field devices and sensors. So this would be a great opportunity for SPE to bring these devices on the network, really.
And this tells me that users are looking for just increased visibility. If you're looking at the top two specifically, sensors and I/O, but even down to simple devices like push buttons, which came in around the center of what respondents said that they were interested in. That tells me that people are just wanting to, in more real time, understand what's going on their plant floor application.
Mm-hmm.
And as an example for, like say technical support for machinery that's in the field, even, an OEM that has a somewhat advanced process of that they're able to remote into a machine and physically, bring up the screen, see what's going on. They're still relying on a lot of data that starts with customer states that this is the problem.
Sure.
They're not able to drill down to that individual sensor because, they're not on site. It hasn't escalated to that point yet, but they're relying on information which at the end of the day, the operator or the technician may not be the expert in the machine that they're looking at. And I feel like there's a lot of room for error of chasing a problem that maybe necessarily isn't the root cause.
Sure.
Where, as these sensors, I/O points, push buttons are brought online, you're able to drill down and just immediately know this is the problem. You need to go replace this, or it's prematurely wearing out. You should think about maintenance, those types of things.
Exactly. Okay, and the next question was trying to understand basically the adoption rate, so SPE adoption rate. So the question is, how long do you think it will take for your organization to adopt SPE? So we were trying to see that, again, this is another measure of, trying to assess their willingness to adopt. And 44%, the first and the second, so 1 year or less, 6%, 2 to 4 years came in the highest at 38%, followed by 5 to 10, 20, and so on. And there was obviously the category of don't know, not sure. So key points is one is that the 44% of respondents believe that SPA will gather significant marketplace momentum in 4 years or less. So this is a very important data point. And the next one is that the integrated and engineering firms are most bullish at, that's 54% within 4 years. And respondents expect that serial network will be the first to be displaced by SPE, followed by industry-specific field bus and other, analog. So
the second point about the system integrators is really interesting because that shows that even if they're not experts in it, like more education is needing to be done on the technology, that 1 and 2 is at least feels that they have enough information to get started
exactly.
Within these time frames. But the first bullet point when this was shared at the ODVA conference last October was the most interesting to me, which is that in 1 to 4 years, almost half of the market is interested in having this deployed in some fashion within their environment.
Mm-hmm.
And even more so, it's easy to overlook 6%, but out of 250 respondents, that's 15 OEMs that are ready right now to implement this technology.
Exactly.
And I mean, as an OEM and a device manufacturer, like I don't think we should take that lightly. And
absolutely not.
Especially as ODVA is a standards organization, and we'll get into that, but also collaborating between the different standards organizations, which is happening for the first time. It shows that we've been very aggressive in getting standards out to support the market and are going to have to continue being aggressive to fit this readiness.
Exactly. The next question was that's basically maybe the more of a summary. So what we can say is that the opportunity is now. We gather, from that 80% of the respondents are open to the possibility of SPE. That's significant, and 44% expect their organizations to adopt the new technology within 4 years. That's also very important. And then there was another. So this is part of. I took some of the questions. There were a lot more. But part of that also came out that most expect OT versus IT that OT must take a lead role in building the business case for adoption, showing the business the benefits and so on. And we also, part of the finding is we wanted to understand the challenges, and so we could develop plans and how do you overcome with communication and education. So that's what believe that we can do, and this is some of the ideas is to consider basic and advanced tutorial case studies, cost benefit analysis, planning and implementation guides. What else can be done? Leverage available platforms, videos, webinars, podcasts, social technical papers and articles, and events like this. I mean, this is one of the items that taken place in the industry to promote the industrial Ethernet technology, and SPE is a subset of that. So
we're doing it.
Exactly.
We're doing
we are doing it.
No, but I mean, even in the session yesterday about the time study that was done for the in-cabinet solution of reducing it from, I think it was Lucas shared that it was a day and a half worth of labor to just under a couple hours. Those case studies and time studies we need to do across all the flavors and versions of single pair Ethernet is what is the reduction in copper and what does that mean?
Right.
What is the increase in length? 10BASE-T1L was one of the standards that was settled first within IEEE and has a lot of people excited for the plant floor devices, but in working with semiconductor manufacturers and magnetic chipset providers as well, that was just the beginning of it. They've for the last number of years have been testing well beyond 1,000 meters.
Sure.
So it's like getting that data out there, white papers of even if it's in development, there's a market appetite for it.
Right.
And I mean, at the ODVA conference, just shared as a conceptual idea was the field attachable drop solution for single pair Ethernet as, hey, we don't really know what this is yet, but we're interested in it. And if other people want to work on it, like contact us, basically, that type of thing. So it's, as you said, you know, it's doing more of what we're doing right now, getting the messaging out, like we discussed in the market advisory group last week, of cross collaborative events, podcasts, white papers, really just anything.
Sure.
But the crux of it is devices.
Yep.
So do you want to talk about that, like the need for there's a case for APL and where it's at with devices, and then more so like general purpose single pair Ethernet or other types.
Right. So let me. So we, you know, I'll start with kind of the example of what was done with the APL.
Yeah.
The APL, the Advanced Physical Layer, for was a specific application of SPE that was intended for the process industry to support the intrinsic safe areas and so on. And that was a collaboration that really worked very well between the standard organizations and industry partners. And it took obviously several years to bring it to production and to deploy the technology. And now we're starting to see devices coming to the market. So then obviously, and another application, that came from SPE, we talked about the in-cabinet, but the opportunity is obviously now that SPE can go beyond just these two applications, and what else can be done. And now we're talking about, non-intrinsic safe areas, so general purpose SPE. And we started to use the same platform that we had between the various organizations to really put together all our efforts. We have a framework in place to continue to develop the specification and to really collaborate, make sure we're successful in getting the specification, the power, the channel, the conformance. There's a lot of effort to be, that will need to take place to really deploy SPE general purpose. And so the work is obviously taking place, and we're collaborating with the other organizations, and this is a great place to be.
And I think that's the call to action, is just the collaboration across organizations who maybe don't have a lot in common besides single pair Ethernet technology has been very interesting to watch. Like, since I've been participating within ODVA, of people kind of working together, that are traditionally competitors in the market for the betterment of the technology. I think the next phase of this is the end user applications, that kind of coming out of the darkness and the NDA territory, and just saying, like, reaching out to OEMs, device manufacturers, cable manufacturers, basically anybody that's involved in single pair Ethernet.
Sure.
And then just saying, I have an idea, I don't know how to accomplish it. You seem like the subject matter expert. Like, this is what I want to have happen with this technology. I think that's the critical stage that we're at now, where APL, we've seen
Sure.
the result of that. We've
Right.
seen the positive benefit of doing it, and now it's time to do it with the other versions.
Absolutely. So one, other things that we intend to do relative to SPE, just like we did with the APL, is to develop educational videos,
Yes.
white papers, and these are some of the tools, supporting these events. All of this is. These are some steps that we're taking together with the collaboration, and I'm sure we will work with the other organizations with other ideas for marketing and promoting the technology. So it is starting, it is now.
All right. I'd say that's a good place to leave off for the next one.
Excellent.
Well, Al, thank you so much. We really appreciate your participation last year in Industrial Ethernet Week as well as this year. I'm excited to see where this technology is going within ODVA. I'm very grateful to be a part of it and to have ODVA's support in what we're doing with single pair Ethernet.
Thank you, and it's a pleasure to be here, and I hope that we could continue to work together to promote Ethernet technologies.
All right. We're going to regroup for the next session, and then we'll kick it off from there. Thanks, everyone.
Great, we're back. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the final panel in this year's Industrial Ethernet Week. I'm Amanda Marks. I lead Marketing, Digital Strategy, and IT here at Harding Americas. And I really think we saved the best topic for last this week. I've got a fabulous panel with me to discuss how AI and digital transformation will boost manufacturing productivity, autonomous decision-making, and more. Such a fun topic to dive into. So to begin, I'd like to introduce the panelists joining me today. To my left, I've got R.C. Crosby from Pepperl and Fuchs, a big name in the sensor business. I've got Amanda Krasowski from Rockwell Automation. Everyone knows Rockwell. Amanda has a really interesting history there, coming from the software side, now in safety sensing, intelligent device focus. And my own colleague, Nazario Bayala, industry segment manager here at Harding, focused on automation and robotics. So the four of us have all been working in this industry for a decade or two, and digital transformation and IIoT as a concept is not new to any of us. Like, there's this dream of everything's connected, we have all this data, it's going to make us more efficient, it's going to improve throughput, it's going to reduce downtime. But the reality of getting there has been tough for so many companies. So none of that's new, but what is new, and in the opening, I think it was teed up of, is it a buzzword, is AI becoming this ever-present conversation, and it's in part of our vernacular in everywhere, every aspect of the business, including on the manufacturing shop floor. So let's dive into how this new addition in the mix is going to change this mission that we've all been on. So first question, I guess either RC or Amanda can start us off. Can you talk a little bit about the roles that AI and ML are going to play in digitally transformed manufacturing environments?
Yeah, definitely. So kind of coming back to your idea of the digital transformation piece and that connectivity, the first step, even when we talk about a smart car or a smart home, connectivity is that first step to something that's prognostic, predictive, or at least insightful. And in our efforts to simplify, we still want to make it capable. So as we look at this from a systems approach, which obviously is systems of systems, devices, even our own devices at Rockwell are attached to other things that make it, quite frankly, a system. Giving it that context when we have a multitude of sources of data is going to be most important. But of course, standardization of what that looks like is important for us internally as we try to develop these solutions, but I think more empathetically as we try to understand, the how, the what, and the why. So from a systems approach, ultimately, we want to be leading with outcomes. Make sure that this is persona-focused, make sure that this is user-driven, and of course, that's established by, where you are in the life cycle of your application, and what's your digital appetite, I think, most importantly.
So I don't want to let the cat out of the bag, 2 minutes into the session, but no, AI is not just a buzzword, because if it were, everything that we've done to this point in the Industry 4.0 hasn't been enough, hasn't been good enough. We've done okay with digital transformation, taking, dumb sensors and making them intelligent, but what's really going to set that off is, a generative AI looking at the event data, making predictions, pattern recognition, and giving that better, more educated data, actionable intel to somebody who can deal with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, because when we look at this whole digitalization, right, AI and ML, it all plays into that whole ecosystem. But as we look forward, and AI, as you mentioned, Amanda, has been talked about for years, and extends beyond manufacturing. But really, what's the key for us to actually start realizing some of the things that digitalization promises? And it could be overwhelming, as we touched on yesterday, but at the end of the day, it's to RC's point, it's taking those tangible data and making sense of what's important for us. You need to break it down in simple form before it gets too overwhelming. And so taking it back to some of the conversations again, within a conveyor line, within that particular applications, maybe it's determining the center alignment, determining is there dust accumulations, simple data like that that allows you to start really sinking your teeth into it as opposed to looking at the entire data. Because as you guys mentioned, AI and ML is all about pattern recognition, but it's also continuously looking at all those different patterns and making it smarter, more beneficial, right? Because it's one thing to stand pat and say, yep, that's what we recognize as being what's considered a passable or acceptable criteria or KPI, but we know that conditions vary within manufacturing facilities all the time. So it has to continuously look at different patterns and make the best decisions as far as now the conditions have changed, let's reboot and make sure that we're actually doing the things that we need to do to improve overall efficiency.
Yeah. So the direction I'd like to take it that I think is really interesting is let's think about some of the individuals within a manufacturing plant in different roles that might be the recipients of these kind of recommendations that you're mentioning, Nazario. Can we talk a little about the impact that this would have on certain stakeholders in different roles?
Yeah,
Amanda, you want to start?
This question reminds me, I think, of the age-old. It's almost a mantra at this point at Rockwell, and especially, whether I was working in software, hardware, or somewhere in between, is, oh gosh, it's 3 a.m.
Oh, yeah.
and someone has a problem, right? We give that individual a variety of different names, and I think, well, actually, to that point, it's not always just one individual. I think a lot of this comes down to, I mentioned digital appetite earlier, but also it's the structure of an organization. Those people might be, say, one maintenance technician. It might be the jack of all trades, maybe with a bit of an IT background. It might be several people that you're relying upon. So now the question is still driven by outcome, but obviously empathetic to, well, there's a lot of factors I got to work through to get to my solution, right? I think from an operations and maintenance standpoint, that's where we feel the crux of a lot of the value add. The operational costs are usually, what we're trying to think about as that, yep, that is where I tangibly feel that value. What's going to be really important, I think, for industrial automation, and especially at Rockwell too, is taking that idea and shifting it left. Where can we add more value earlier in the process, earlier in the integration artifacts or whatever it may be, to really reduce the burden that's felt on the end by those that, maybe don't always have a voice at the beginning of that process.
So she keeps using this term digital appetite, which assumes there's a digital hunger somewhere. And so what I think's happening is you get a lot of guys in the C-level suites that are looking down and say, we want data. All of our competitors are getting data. We want data. And, they don't know what it is that they want. They really want actionable intel, really is what they want to make the best decisions, best informed decisions. And you can get just this digital junk food of data, that just, I don't know what to take. I can just take a bunch of data from everywhere and it's useless. So where we like to think about, since we are sensor guy, I'm a sensor guy, we live at the edge of the machines, we like to think about the operator and where the data is created. And we put intelligence into the sensor so that the operator doesn't necessarily have to carry that intelligence for the device. So if the operator is comfortable with the machine and the machine is running at peak productivity, now the production manager's happy. And if the production manager's happy, then the COO is happy and all that other stuff. And you've got a really nice infrastructure. Graham, can you bring up the loop real quick? So this is our loop. It's in Twinsburg, just outside of Cleveland. And I'll walk you through briefly what this is. And so this is just a basically a dashboard of intelligent sensors that we have that, starting in the upper left, that's just a live video feed from when this loop was recorded. You see this tray going around a little conveyor system, and just underneath that you see a little ultrasonic sensor, and underneath that you can see the live videos of each of the other sensors as they're deployed on the machine. Upper middle, you have an IO-Link encoder, which is giving you speed feedback immediately. Below that, you have a distance measuring sensor, which is giving you distance measurement feedback immediately. Below that, you see our RFID head, which, again, that's giving real-time asset tracking throughout the system. Upper right is a vibration monitor. That's real-time condition monitoring, and then another distance measuring sensor that's also doing some IO functions. So we've all seen a dashboard like this. If you've been in any maintenance area, there's a dashboard of sensors that they're monitoring, but it requires somebody to look at it. This is the state of today, right? So these dashboards, and it's a real-time assessment of what's going on the floor. And so your operator can just look at this and know that the machine is well, and it's going to give you a signal if there's an issue, and then you can go remediate that, or the maintenance guys can go deal with that. So a lot of that intelligence is resident to the machine, but it requires somebody to monitor it. And then what we think is, okay, instead of letting the data go from this, and it goes to wherever data goes after it's used, why not take that to an event database and train a generative AI on this, start teaching it the patterns? You have all this anyway. You can keep the dashboard, let that reside with the operator. But now you've got an event database to learn from.
And it's cool. I want to add on to this because touching on the different user personas that you folks talked about. The 3 a.m. stories that we constantly hear about, right? And now that you have this particular application, the ability to remotely monitor what's going on and using AI machine learning to say, okay, these are all the different patterns. And then going back to the original example that I used, you can easily utilize all the different data, so vibration, want to bring it back to basic, or even the photo eyes. Are the photo eyes properly lined up? Because in previous years, you have operators that are constantly looking at, it's like, okay, what's going on here? I want to bring it back to the labor shortages today and how this could impact it. I had the privilege of talking with a plant manager for the 3rd largest waste management company here in the US. And because they couldn't get people to monitor those conveyors anymore, he basically went up to me and said, do you know anyone that could potentially babysit my conveyor? I will train them, I will pay them up to $70K per year just to do that basic function. But to RC's point, now if you have this intelligence, you see the different pattern and you set yourself that this is the acceptable, I guess, alignment, you no longer need to have that. And you could deploy that operator into something a little bit more challenging, right? Something more beneficial, and taking it back to the lack of resources. That's huge, right? Because now you're becoming a little bit smarter. And to Amanda's point, as far as predictive maintenance is concerned, well, if you do have that pattern, you no longer have to worry about that 3 a.m. call.
Yeah.
Right?
I'm reminded of a comment, Amanda, that your colleague Bill made yesterday during the session of, it was an example of a sensor monitoring a motor's currents. And that motor, if it hits a 900K cycle and it's predicting based on past failures, it's going to fail around 1 million, that motor can start its own work order and put that ticket out in advance to bring the person to the work with that kind of intelligence. Like hearing a story like that kind of brings it to life for me.
100%.
Yeah, there's so many ways. So again, bringing it back to the whole user persona, even this with the whole supply chain issue, you could take AI and look at all the different things so that you can determine what are the typical delivery dates, what's happening within your vendor, and do I need to start planning accordingly to make sure that I actually have the parts necessary to meet my own customers' promise date. And we all know what's transpired over the past 3 years. And I think that's why, in terms of going back to your original question, is AI and ML just a buzzword, or is it actually happening? It is happening, and it has to.
Yeah, if it doesn't happen, all of this is really, I don't know, it's not as impactful as the other iterations of, Industry 1.0, 2.0, 3.0.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't, this is great. This infrastructure that we have, it's great. It's nice and data intensive if you let it. But the AI is so much more accurate and faster than human beings that it has to be done.
And in that same breath, maybe, I guess you both said it so well, and perhaps I'm not doing it justice in this reiteration, but it still comes back to the people. There's obviously power in these tools, but it's enhancing current behavior sets.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a tool to, obfuscate or change or eliminate. It's a tool to enhance behaviors. And that context is only provided, again, based on, well, what are the outcomes I'm trying to get here, exactly as you said. And that's still informed by the expertise of those human beings. So it is, surely not a buzzword. And we surely have people hungry. I love that.
Yeah,
We surely have people
must be a
hungry.
hunger.
And the way that we have expressed that hunger is it's still outcome driven. I think the cool part for all of us here is that we get to maybe be nosy a little bit, or at least have an empathetic lens on, maybe that key piece of information is not going to come out right, but we're going to find the root of that problem to be solved.
It is such a powerful tool, and just to add on to what my colleagues here are mentioning in terms of use cases, what are actually some of the things that are happening today? Eastern Municipal Water District in California, I believe it's their 6th largest water treatment facility. They're utilizing AI to control PID, to make sure that if there's any type of change within the water flow, temperature, speed, and whatnot, it can adjust accordingly. And by using all the different data that their PID controller is able to pump out, they've been able to successfully reduce electricity up to a little over 2,000 kilowatts. And that's per day. And that translates to about over $100,000 worth of savings per day. Think about it. Then you extend that to on a yearly and on an annual basis. A little over 1.2 mil, right? That's not too shabby. So when you talk about sustainability, that's a perfect example of sustainability.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is a good spot to tag on to Amanda's point, and kind of talk about what automation and AI is not. And automation has this kind of stigma that it's going to take people's jobs, and I'm going to steal this from John Oliver. I mean, this was on his program, and I think it's fantastic. It perfectly sums it up. But automation doesn't automate jobs. It automates tasks. And it's usually repetitive tasks that nobody really wants to do anyway. So and he uses the example of the ATM. When those started to really deploy in the 80s, the task of giving cash back to people was automated. We didn't get rid of bank tellers. We still have them today, even though ATMs do a whole lot more than they did even 10 years ago. So automation doesn't take jobs, it takes tasks, and all that does is shift the work. Now, right now, the AI is getting the same stigma, where you see all these tech companies laying off, thousands of employees every day, and they're blaming that on AI, or AI is taking the blame for it. And again, it's tasks that are being automated, but these people are laying off due to poor fiscal performance, or they overhired coming out of the pandemic, or a variety of different reasons that AI is taking the heat for that, but it's really not the case. It's the same thing. Now, this is the first time, though, in my recollection, that automation has historically been done in blue collar tasks. That's on the floor with AI. Now it's white collar tasks, and even artistic tasks that are being automated as well. So it may require a shift in work and how work is done, but it's not going to be the elimination of jobs.
Mm-hmm. It's such an interesting topic, building on what both of you have said. I think it automates tasks, but then it's also so much about the people. I think it's also introducing a whole new set of skills that we need within a manufacturing setting, in the evolution of going from where status quo is to where this is all going to take us. What kind of conversations are you both having around that of, entirely new roles that need to be defined and filled?
When we're not talking about that individual at 3 a.m, which is a lot, we are talking about absolute changes in organizational hierarchy, a mindset or a posture beyond the hunger or appetite, but other factors that maybe equally come in and influence. So trying to see those that are of a digital maven, in a sense. Maybe they have some computer science background, even going back to some of the conversations around system integrators or OEMs, looking at individuals, whether it's newer talent or experienced talent, that they have some of the onus of that decision-making power, or at least influence over it, and they have more of a understanding, whereabouts, whatever, from an IT or computer science background, for example. And we talk about the convergence of IT and OT often, right? Definition, Industry 4.0, and then some IT-OT convergence. But what does that mean? We're also seeing from, again, an organizational hierarchy standpoint, IT and OT are reporting under the same person, the CISO or the CTO, whatever it may be. So it's not, we're practicing what we preach. It is, not just, hey, we tangibly see it, but then that coordination and that collaboration is also happening. So it is evolving, and that evolution, I think, happens even for a lot of us personally in how we interact with, our own consumer devices. And, of course, we don't want to get stuck in, ooh, that's exciting. This is a shiny object. Really, it's why are we compelled by these things? And it is obviously what the outcome it drives. And again, the behaviors that it enhances.
Yeah, and if you could even go back, and I'd like to use the baseball example. If you look at it, I'm trying to think, Jimmy Beanball, right, from Oakland A's. He started this whole analysis of, because they were a smaller budget team, he wanted to be smart and utilize data to analyze which free agent player should I be going after. So he was utilizing all of this data to make better sense. Now, AI and ML weren't quite there at that point, but it's all based on data-driven. So fast forward to today, most of the major league teams, actually extends all these sports teams are now using data and have data analysts to look at all of those different patterns, right? So what does that mean for us in terms of manufacturing? Bring it back to manufacturing, to your point. Now you need to have not only hardware, but also software to make sense of having that IT and OT convergence. Because it's one thing to have the data, but really translating what's important for that particular industrial engineer as far as what's important to them from a KPI standpoint. Because go back to user persona, what's important to them? Well, it's constantly looking at the overall efficiency of their plant. And how does that translate? Again, you need to take it in basic chunks and determining what's important to me from a performance standpoint before I start looking at the overall science of what manufacturing is, because that becomes overwhelming. That doesn't really address what we talked about before of accelerating market adoption. In order for us to accelerate market adoption of game-changing technologies such as these, you need to make sure that you're actually proving it out in small chunks. And you and I talked about this before numerous times. Start small, dream big, but keep evolving. And I think that's what AI and ML provides us.
And from a practicality, start with your biggest problems first.
Mm.
So the people I usually talk to are OEMs and system integrators, and so they're starting to think about how automatic can I make my machinery? How self-reliant can I make my machinery? How adaptive can we deploy these things? Because ultimately, that's what the customers kind of want to offload that somewhere as well. They don't have to hire as technically savvy people if the machine is intelligent enough, if the machine is automatic and can do tool conversion and things like that. I don't have to hire people to do that. They can just babysit. That may be an oversimplification, but,
Yeah.
but that's what that stakeholder group is looking at, along with the end user groups are looking at.
It makes for more equitable participation, in a sense, of this grand ecosystem that is manufacturing industrial automation. That we know that there's differences in segmentation, industry, application, obviously workforce size, whatever it may be. And yeah, to your point, we don't always have a data scientist, there. Maybe they're looking at someone who at least has that curiosity or savviness or whatever it may be. But why should they not partake in the benefits from whatever standpoint they're kind of looking at that outcome from? So yeah, still very much persona driven. Again, still very outcome driven. And knowing that we're starting small and dreaming big, I know that I don't know. I dream a bit differently probably than the people next to me. And I think we all come from a place that our components and our devices, gosh, have a tremendous amount of power in them. And as we merge that, the hardware, software, firmware in between as well, again, making up that larger system, we know some people maybe really care, and they need to, about that smaller component. And there are some that need to understand that, well, this is part of a conveyor, or this is my area over here, or this is my facility in Wisconsin, or whatever it may be.
Yeah. So I do want to invite the audience, if you guys have commentary, questions, go ahead and pop them in the chat. We'll have time for you to feed us some topics. But another question for you guys in the meantime. Can you talk a little bit about where you're really starting to see these things implemented that we've been discussing so far across the industrial world, and what kind of impacts are happening out there for those that have already gotten started?
I'm a little biased, at least towards some of the software standpoint from my history, but as we're seeing this more evolve, and granted, I try not to be biased also from an internal point of view, but having those that have the gumption or the expertise or whatever try to put together their own APIs or their own way of looking at a problem is still very much software driven. And then that decision-making power is kind of a bit agnostic to brands sometimes as well. And so we need to be very mindful of that truly it's, all right, well, this is still very outcome driven. How do we make sure that we play in the larger ecosystem? I think for us, even just our own ecosystem. My colleague Bill Martin mentioned yesterday that then that means there's a lot of insight, again, we can gather from those devices, and making this a very equitable participation, no matter who the customer, enterprise, whatever you may be, is going to be most important here. So that equitable participation means also equitable participation of our devices and our components. A push button exists in the same ecosystem as a very expensive variable frequency drive. How do I still make sure that I'm getting enough context out of all of it, knowing that there's in some way connection there? So much of it, again, is driven by, hey, how do we just sit and listen and see what's happening, and maybe not have folks tell us always what their problems are, but kind of observe that posted on their monitor screen or something like that, and better understand that, oh, well, maybe that push button or something else I think is going to, deserve, again, that equitable participation. And we talked about single pair Ethernet just before then too. Gosh, what a fantastic use case on that front as well. Better determinism and outcome, driven troubleshooting and maintenance activities around that. I've thought a lot, and I think we've seen a lot of that more left on the integration piece, and now we're able to take those outcomes and make sure it's more in turn of part of that commissioning side of things too.
So we talked about adoption and it's made its way to rural Oklahoma. So as far as adoption goes, especially from an OEM or a greenfield deployment, it's adopted. So it's there. It's not going to go anywhere. It's only going to get better. It's only going to get more expansive. Alan McKenzie, they talked about the reasons why some of the brownfield stuff doesn't get done. Yeah, that's fair enough. But there's definitely a digital appetite for this, and they're partaking.
Yeah. I mean, again, where's it being used? To a certain extent, and I'd like to parrot some of the things that I was listening to a podcast from Chris Lucky and those folks, and they cited a really great example that really exemplifies that AI is nothing new. If you look at vision cameras, those things have been around for what? How many years? And it's based on continuously looking at different patterns to take away that mundane operation where before you may have an operator looking at, say, jelly bean. Do these conform with, is this the shade of yellow that I'm supposed to be going, and is that good? Now you take that out, you give it to the vision camera, where now they're looking at different patterns, but then AI is taking it to the next level of, okay, let's look at all of those different patterns. Another company that's taken advantage of combining all the different data that a vision camera would typically pump out and take it to the inspection process of it. Foxconn has done that with their PCB inspection for smartphones. And they've been able to reduce their defect rate by up to 10%. That's huge, right? So is it happening? Are there use cases? You betcha.
There's some great examples from rural Oklahoma all the way to large enterprises. It's being adopted different sizes. We've got a great question from the audience that I think we could kick around here. So let's talk a little about where the responsibility lies in creating and deploying these AI-based solutions. How much should a company be thinking about, well, the provider of the device, the provider of these smart devices should be doing this piece for me, or do I need to have my own team within my plant be creating these things, or are system integrators playing a really big role in this? You guys want to comment on conversations you're having on how these pieces come together?
Sure. The answer is there's no one answer. I would.
Yeah.
Now I will cite last year, Nazar and I we were at a baggage handling summit, and one of the officers from United, he stood up there and he said, "We want to strike one check to one entity and know that it works." So that's in their, that's in their landscape of how they want to do things. They likely need somebody on site that has some kind of development capabilities for these type of solutions, but it could be an integrator, it could be a provider, it could be all of the above, but really it needs to be a unified team pushing one solution, because that's ultimately what my customers have said they wanted.
Yeah, that's how I would imagine it. It gets complicated when these are parties that have never had to necessarily work together in past, eras of digitization and factory.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, to that same point, I think internally too, it's a good opportunity, maybe for us that sit also on the other side of this, that it's on us to make sure that we're doing that, knowing that we have an expansive network of partners. Whether you are a solution provider, we know that, hey, if I'm developing a piece of software, who's going to be using it? It's not just coming down to different flavors anymore. It's making sure that I can satisfy definitely good enough, minimally viable, whatever you want to call it, experience. And so, much of that, again, I come back to, it's so very much outcome driven. And I think there's been a lot of really good points here that I can't wait to take some good, furious notes after I get off this chair to say, there needs to be a different understanding, I think, of, does this change what our interactions look like? We're getting comfortable knowing that these are the bounds. And yeah, as we develop solutions further, it should, again, be outcome driven. It should be, again, persona driven. And so that will likely highlight then, well, hey, is this embedded in the device? Is this embedded in the system? Is this at the edge? Is this in the cloud? Whatever it may be, I don't want, in a sense, that determinism or that solutioning to necessarily define what that interaction will look like. It's very, well, what problem are we actually trying to solve?
Yeah.
I echo what they say. It's everyone's responsibility, right? Because, and at the end of the day, whether device manufacturers such as yourselves, you don't really know what your customers' end goals are. It's up to them to say, this is what we want. And they may not necessarily know the technology, but it's to our advantage to educate the folks as far as our end customers, the capabilities out there. And then the onus is on them to have that communication with us. This is what I'm trying to do. How can you make that happen? And how can you scale it, right? Because it goes back to what Al and Mackenzie mentioned in the previous panel discussion. It's education, education. As a customer, you don't know what you can do unless you have information from the likes of Rockwell and Pepperl and Fuchs as far as what their technology can offer them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what I'd say is I feel like it's an opportunity for all of us to take a more ecosystem approach to this, knowing that if you really put yourself in the shoes of someone working to transform their plant, that there are new players that have to come together to solve this for how these different pieces of AI fit, how the data comes together, and that it's our responsibility as all members of this larger ecosystem to help define a way that feels, like it's not just full of friction and challenge for that team.
So it's not just education, it's communication. So the second part of that question is, how do we align the stakeholders, right? It's essentially, that was what the second part of the question is. And what you'll find when you try and deploy one of these systems is the stakeholders all have different intentions and sometimes conflicting intentions. So you have the C-suite saying, we want data. You have production saying, we want actionable intel. You have purchasing that's looking at initial cost versus TCO, or total cost of ownership, because they're not graded on how much sustainability they've created in less copper and how much time they've saved due to wiring practices. They're not graded on that. They're graded on, can you get it for the cheapest price? You have IT fighting with OT. You're not going to put that on my network. And so early, you have to get all these stakeholders into a room and get some level of alignment. Because if you don't, it will fail. And that's why there's really only about a 30% adoption rate with these technologies to this point. It's because there's just so much conflict and other, there's a myriad of other reasons, which Al and Mackenzie went over with earlier. Those translate to other network systems. So communication, education, early alignment is probably the best practice there.
Yeah, 100%. If you look at who could potentially bring all of this thing together, right? System integrators play such an important role. Anytime there's a huge project, it's up to the system integrator to determine what their customers' end goals are, and then procure all the different solutions that make up what that looks like to achieve that goal. But then the onus is on us to also provide that information, collaborate with those system integrators to say, these are all the different technologies that are available that can make that widget do this, do that, to provide that end goal for your customer. Because, it's digitalization is all about increased efficiency, right? I mean, it's buzzwords again. What does that mean? But you got to start somewhere.
And how apt of you to mention that, the power that our systems integrators, our OEMs, and the like hold here, and that so much, again, of the value is felt on, yeah, what is my impact to sustainability? What are my operational costs? And gosh, what a great point on the total cost of ownership, that that idea is, as much as we want it to shift. And I try not to come at this from a marketing lens either, but we get that there's so many things driven by standards of conformance, other regulatory things that are coming, or maybe we're anticipating that they will be. And you got to stay ahead, but then also meet it, and what's good enough for us. And I think these points are perfect. It's how early can we communicate? How do we remain curious? I think that speaks again to each one of us here. It's exciting, at least being a part of Rockwell Automation and with groups here, that as we develop these new experiences and as we innovate with our customers and with our partners, that we have equitable, maybe I need to put money in the swear jar, but this equitable contribution, not just I understand my market, I understand my technology, but I understand my user's experience. All these folks have equitable participation, now more so than ever before, to make sure that we can scale and do the things that we want to do together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So in that spirit of being curious, we've got another question from the audience. Amanda, I feel like this could be a great one for you. Someone's asking a little bit about machine learning, the way it works and how it changes system design of tomorrow, which is a very big, broad question, but I know system design is core to what you and your team are doing. Thoughts on this?
Oh gosh, and how much time do we have? No. Yeah, so I will admit, first and foremost here, that gosh, I'm one tiny grain of sand in this larger Rockwell Automation ecosystem. But the exciting part of representing truly Rockwell Automation's most historic business segment. I mean, the Bradley brothers starting this up, our components, our business and whatnot, is I think, gosh, it lends itself really, really well to what does the system design look like for tomorrow. And that again is informed much by our partners. That is informed by geography, location, vertical adjacency, whatever it may be. And so I guess where I want to say this is, even at this last automation fair, we are trying to redefine what that experience looks like from a very early design standpoint. Yep. But more importantly, as we look at anything from our safety sensing, industrial components, drives, motion servo drives, whatever, down the road here too, we have to know that there are workflows linking everything, even into the outcome of, obviously, oh, this is where I tangibly feel, the value, the outcome of my system, my machine, my components is working well enough. So we want to make sure that we have very substantial, standardized device identity, system identity data, essentially, that's coming as early in the process as possible. So when we're talking about system design, we also know that there are insights learned not just on that instantiation of the design, but as we move forward. We want the opportunity for our customers, our partners, to scale. And so I think the most important thing here, as I think we've mentioned so many times today, is the connectivity of our devices and our components, and giving them at least a standard way of getting that attribute identity data is, step one, and even then some, of making sure that this really robust pattern recognition, or whatever it may be as it manifests in AI and ML, is going to be so important. But you mentioned sometimes we need to look at this as a brainstorming tool, and how we're making tasks more efficient. Rockwell Automation has a really awesome partnership with Microsoft, and I'm really excited to see what's going to be coming out next, especially on that front. And we have lots of innovations coming. We're excited.
Great answer. So another question, and I almost can't believe we've made it this far without mentioning the term digital twin, but it's part of this broader conversation. Someone's asking about how digital twins play a role in automation and what role connectivity plays. And I'll start by mentioning something that was discussed from a panelist from AWS in our international version of Industrial Ethernet Week that struck me around this, so I had taken it down. He is predicting, expansion of digital twins across the manufacturing environment with this intelligence built on top that synthesizes that data and helps us ultimately make better decisions. And used this term that I really loved of With that in place, it allows us to have the work find the human rather than the human find the work. Isn't that beautiful? Which is much like we've discussed, but having a digital twin underpin that, I think is part of how it may come to life. Any thoughts, you guys, on digital twins?
Digital twin will play a huge role, and it's making its way now, because if you look at it and bringing it back to the whole manufacturing process, you could even use a digital twin in terms of laying out what that manufacturing facility can potentially look like, and how it could be as optimal as it could be before actually getting to the nitty-gritty, right? You can run the simulation, and that's the beauty of it. But then taking it back to AL and ML, it's utilizing all of those data, historical data, to say, okay, we know that with this particular layout, this is the type of output that we have. Now, if you make some changes here and there and run the simulation, what can that eventually provide us? So in terms of just engineering feats, it could take you to the next level.
I think on that note, if we look at digital twin in that simulation or emulation context, it's how do we reduce as much risk later on by having more
doing this
information
up
front. So I mean, whether it be a digital twin or outcomes that are very, again, simulation or emulation focused, say calibration even, I think that continues to play a very important role, again, making sure that those outcomes are best understood early in the design process as possible.
Yeah, and just like everything else we've talked about today, digital twin is going to make its way everywhere. It's certainly proliferated a great deal in the last 5 years, but anything that you can do to soft launch or pre-launch, configuration or any change, or before you put AI and ML on the machine, soft test it on the digital twin and see what happens, and then you can sort of pre-test everything. So it will be the methodology moving forward for everyone. Just has to be.
That's great.
And I love what you said, reduce risk, right? Yeah. Reduce risk. Yeah.
Improve productivity, reduce risk.
Yeah.
Still the name of the game.
Easy.
All right. Thank you guys so much for your time in joining us today. I'm going to invite up my colleagues Lucas and John to close out our third Industrial Ethernet Week.
It has been a tremendous week. I want to thank all the panelists involved, all the virtual participants, and all the questions that came through. It's what it takes to be a pioneer. You have to set the standard. You have to go ahead of everybody, even when you have uncertainties. But that's really, truly who these companies that are represented here are. They're pioneers in their own industries. And so I wanted to thank each and every one of them for the amazing work that they've done to introduce a new technology. And so we have a few takeaways for the week, as well as some numbers that we wanted to share with you guys. So again, this is a global event, and this year we had over 2,000 registrations, which is really a record for us. And more importantly, we had roughly 57 countries represented, which is really a remarkable thing. It's truly a global environment that we're in. So really wanted to thank each and every one of you. All of this will be recorded, so you'll be able to watch it later as well. But we have a few takeaways from all the content that was delivered this week, and then Lucas is going to kind of go through that in the next few slides for us before we wrap it up.
Yeah, thanks, John. Yeah, so can you believe it? 3 full days of Industrial Ethernet Week across the globe. Lots of people listening in, lots of people learning more and more about this whole ecosystem. Just as a reminder, 2 days ago we talked all about sustainability, and really thank you to our panelists Beyond Design for being a part of this. Couple of things that really stuck out to me as we went through this topic of sustainability, but one of the things that probably is the biggest is that it's becoming a differentiator for your customers' purchase decisions. We talked about it used to just be price, quality, lead time over and over and over, and now we're actually seeing sustainability as a purchase decision criteria. And so knowing what your customers' goals are and your CO2 footprint will set you apart. Probably another alarming statistic if you weren't with us on Tuesday and you're just learning, tuning in now. Scope 1 and 2 emissions, what happens basically inside your walls, direct and indirect, actually amounts for a very small of your total CO2 emissions, about 3%, according to the World Economic Forum. That means 97% of what you're consuming is actually happening outside your four walls in the supply chain. So knowing your footprint, localizing your supply is important to knowing the full picture.
Yeah, to that end, obviously we talked a lot about automation this week, but last week I had a meeting with standard organizations in the rail industry, and they're looking into SPE. If you think about in transportation, and whether it's a locomotive or a passenger train, weight is important. And when you talk about reducing your copper by over 70%, that's going to have an impact.
Absolutely.
And so now they're looking into making that a standard, starting with locomotives. And basically, we have a preliminary decision that single pair Ethernet would be one of the top two finalists for the decision making. So it is really becoming front and center when it comes to when you talk about sustainability and CO2. It's not just I remember in the beginning there were a number of targets established. Here's what we want to be in 2030, but now the clock's ticking, and they want to see results. And so now what we're saying is, okay, we've got to make a decision. And single pair Ethernet is it's not debatable what it does in terms of copper reduction, from your 4 pair to 1 pair. So it's good to see that these decisions are now front and center. Sustainability and these topics are front and center when it comes to the decision making into what technology will you adopt for the next century.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I really appreciate Beyond Design and their perspective. When it comes to sustainability, it all starts with design. So knowing not only your customers' needs, but their go-to-market. They talked about, hey, using theft-proof packaging in, let's say, a Walgreens or a CVS isn't required when you ship that same product through Amazon. And so you can actually reduce your footprint knowing your go-to-market. And then your supply chain options, where can this product be manufactured and built, are all going to be a part of that full solution. Day 2 was all about ease of installation in the industrial environment. I think a lot of us, engineers and component designers and sub-assembly manufacturers, we like to talk about the technology, but really when it comes to our customers, they want it to work and they want it to be easy. And so we spent some time to talk about how we make that as quick as possible. Thanks so much for Rockwell and Six Sensor Intelligence for being with us. We did talk about the number of different technologies that have to work hand in hand, from edge computing, decentralized design, universal connectivity. All are playing a role in this bigger picture. We talked about connectivity products and how you can speed up your installation and your commissioning by having easy to install products. And not only is it about installation, it's also about being able to pick the right components in a BOM as quickly as possible, getting all the data that you need as quickly as possible, and ordering it. And there are a number of tools, and Harding, we showed a few of our tools that enable customers to do that very efficiently. And then today was all about the future. And so thank you again to our panelists, ODVA, Pepperl and Fuchs, and Rockwell, to talk about the technology trends and innovation. Some of the things that I think really struck me today was this stat. I did not know this until you presented this, Al, so thank you so much. 87% of the industry has shown a willingness to invest in single-pair Ethernet. And we talk about single-pair Ethernet as it's a technology, but the real benefit is the weight savings and the ability to get more information off of the equipment that you're building. And as we talked about yesterday, we brought up as an example again today, building cabinets. Think about this, building an entire control cabinet in an hour and a half instead of a day and a half, all enabled by this technology. It's just amazing what benefits is actually going to provide. And what we're doing today, what we're doing this whole week, what we've been doing now for, this is our 3rd year of doing this. And the market is learning and the market is getting interest. And it's just incredible to hear this stat that such a wide variety in the people in the market are showing willingness to invest in this technology. So just incredible. And they're doing that because they're finding that it enables a much lower cost Ethernet deployment. One of the comments yesterday I thought was really interesting. They would just blankly say, look, Ethernet's expensive. It's just expensive to deploy. And so if we can do this more cost effectively, this is a big, we all talk about the benefits of all the data and all the insights, but this also means we have to run wires and have more sensors. And so this SPE actually enables this. It gets you the benefits without the cost. And so that is a real good insight. And then the last major point here is, look, AI is providing actual insights now. And so if you're one of those companies that hasn't deployed AI or you don't have any strategy around AI, this is probably a good time to start looking. What we're finding is that AI is providing actual insights now. And the quote I liked today was, Industry 4.0 wasn't enough. We created a bunch of data volcanoes, and where we just have data coming out of all of these instruments. And I really like this. We can do asset tracking, we can do condition monitoring, we can do productivity analysis today, but it requires someone to look at the data. And what AI does is it gets this data, you get that data to a machine learning model, and now you can you enable operators to act on insights instead of just data. And this is all enabled by AI and ML, and there's quite a few models out there that are allowing this to happen even today. So it's so exciting to see. We just think sustainability, ease of installation, technology, how far we've come, and where the industry's going. It's just been an exciting week for me and for all the panelists and the audience.
Yeah, for sure. So we really wanted to thank all those who are behind the cameras, those who put this thing together. It is a major undertaking to be able to do that and coordinate that with the friends, across the Atlantic. So thank you so much for such a successful event. We really appreciate it, and we'll see you guys next year. We appreciate your time, and count on us. We're in it for the long haul, and we believe in this technology more than anybody. So thank you so much, and we'll see you next year.